Global Brief here with Nobel Prize winner in economics, George-Akerlof. Pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great. Nice to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful panel you did for the Glendon Center for Global Challenges. Quick question on animal spirits.
Yes.
This is what you're writing about. It's what you spoke about. What do you mean by animal spirits?
Okay. So I think by animal spirits, I mean psychological motives which enter into macroeconomics. And so we have 5 of them in the book. So they are confidence, fairness, corruption and bad faith, money illusion, and the fact that people tell stories, and that's very important for them.
Right. And you are, through the invocation of animal spirits, which goes back to Keynes, trying to broaden, if you will, the analytical framework for micro and macroeconomics.
So especially here, macroeconomics, we feel these animal spirits play a central role in answering the major questions. Actually, we think the major questions about macroeconomics, because most of macroeconomics is why you're not in the classical equilibrium. So in the standard classical equilibrium, if 2 people could get together and make a trade and it was better for both of them, they would do it. That means that there's going to be no unemployment. And because if there was true unemployment, then in fact it means that people who are not working, who could in fact be productive.
Yeah. Professor Akerlof, do these animal spirits have only individual manifestation, or do they have an identity or a quality that's peculiar to different collectives, a country, if you will?
Okay, well, I think actually they tend to be, they are referenced to whole countries, that somehow people begin to tell stories, for example. Everybody learns the same story, and then people repeat it to everybody else, and you know that just occurs. And then people tend to believe these stories.
So
and then
there are
these
different breeds of animals.
Well, different stories tend to be believed at different times. So if you go back just 2 years ago, everybody believed, or a very large number of people believed, that financial markets had found somehow magical ways to eliminate risk, which they hadn't. And people did all kinds of speculations, which they wouldn't have done if they didn't believe this story.
And degrees of belief in that story would differentiate the different countries or societies in some cases. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, different societies tend to have different stories, and furthermore, they have different stories at different times. So one of the ways we got into the financial crisis was, in fact, that the story about magical financial markets simply collapsed.
Now, just to be a little playful, what would the animal spirit, generally speaking, of Middle America be? And how would you differentiate that from Middle Canada or Middle Europe? If I could characterize it that way, or is that...
I'm not sure that I know the difference, you know? The thing is, actually, in a lot of my work, what I'm very careful to do is, our books tend to be sort of U.S. Centric, and the reason is because precisely for the question that you asked, because I think that you have to understand the stories that people are telling, and you have to, so we tend to think about people and places that we really deeply understand. So I feel more comfortable talking about, let's say, United States stories, because I live there, than I do, let's say, I think I know Canada pretty well, but Canadian stories, or especially European stories.
Right. Now, would one way of dealing with these animal spirits, or regulating them, if you will, and molding them, be to tell different stories, or to push different stories from the policymakers' standpoint?
I think probably you can do this just by simple regulation. So, for example, let's there was this story that somehow financial markets had found ways to eliminate or very much reduce risk. Well, there was a story that this occurred because of derivatives. Well, then people should have thought about how we should regulate the derivatives markets. We don't know how much regulation might have been necessary to have made this crisis very much less. It's even conceivable that really a very small amount of regulation of the derivatives markets could have kept us from out of this financial crisis. It could have been the really very small amounts of elimination of risk through derivatives, or so-called elimination through risk, was in fact what was responsible for the financial crisis. So, it seems to me what you need to do is you need to have a little bit of common sense. And think about what people are doing. Think about the fact that people are telling stories, and they will be telling stories. You don't know what stories they are, and and people may not be doing the things that ultimately turn out to be the best for themselves.
Perfect. Professor Akerlof, thanks for joining us at Global Brief at Glennon.
Thank you
Cheers.
very much.
Thanks.
It's nice. Thank you.